welcome back. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the One Body Podcast. I'm your co-host, Juice.
And I am Toya. Welcome back to episode 8 of the podcast.
We're going to pretty much be done counting after this.
Yes, this might be the last count. Yeah, welcome back to the podcast, another episode. Welcome. Today's episode is a little more of a personal one, but still that something that you can get something out of. I think with all of our podcasts, we want you to leave with some sort of information or find benefit out of it. We never want it to be just like, this is about me, yay, and then that's it. So we do want you to find some benefit out of this. If you missed our last podcast that we put out, it's almost like a little follow-up to that. We kind of talked about it a little in there, but our last podcast, we celebrated 1 year of parenthood. And Jakai being 1. Wild. Now he's almost 2, basically. That's how fast time goes.
Exactly. But yeah, we have a great episode today. Even if this really doesn't apply to you, we think it's really important just as from an awareness standpoint, just because you made a post a while ago just talking about your journey with preeclampsia, and you had no idea so many people struggle with it. Yeah. And it was just kind of an eye-opener for us, to where we want to kind of be advocates for it, because it's something that we struggle with early on after we had the baby.
And I had multiple people that reached out within the months after saying that they were diagnosed because of a post I made. And that was something that really made me realize wow, this needs to be talked about more, because that's life-saving and that's not being dramatic. And the fact that a post that I made, just little old me making a post about it, and then someone recognizing those symptoms in themselves and then bringing it up and them being diagnosed is that's literally wild. Life-saving. So imagine if more people talked about it, or there was some more awareness, I think could be even more life-saving for more people.
For sure. So before we get into today, a little housekeeping. We have a Juice and Toya app. Go check it out. We'll continue to say it until you go download it. But we have live streams. We have workouts. We have workout programs. We're working on a brand new program. Won't say anything about it yet, but brand new program. Also, we have nutrition. We have recipes.
And
you can message us one-on-one, literally us. You can message me right now. I won't respond right now, but I'll get back to you within 24 hours. Promise you that. So go check it out. We'll leave the link down in the description. Go download it. You get 7 days free to check it out. And if it doesn't work for you,
cancel anytime.
Cancel at any time. So go check it out.
And then we also have our Juice and Toya merch, which is in partnership with Lululemon. So make sure you go check that out. We'll drop the link as well, where you can find that at our website, onebodyla.com/shop.
And also be sure to subscribe to our newsletter as well, because we might be doing some in-person workouts. We might be dropping some giveaways. So go to onebodyla.com to sign up for our email list to stay on the loop with what we got going on, because we got a lot of big plans coming up in the fall.
Yeah. Cool. Amazing.
That's it.
All right. So let's get into the episode. I want to kind of stay on track here too, because I could ramble about this all day long. So essentially, this is now the day that this goes live is the 1 year anniversary of me being admitted to the hospital for postpartum preeclampsia, or the 1 year anniversary of me being diagnosed with postpartum preeclampsia. And it's something that I haven't talked about a lot. I talked about it maybe a little right when I was diagnosed, just to give people a heads up of why, we had 10 days of having Jakai, and then we went dark because we were in the hospital and just kind of dealing with this. And so we talked about it a little then. And then after that, I don't think we really talked about it much after that. And for me, it was just because it was so hard that talking about it, I think I didn't even really know what to say, because I was just also so in the thick of it. Yeah. And then also I think there were times where I was like, oh, it's over. I'm done. Mm-hmm. And then it would be back to square one. And so there was one time where I posted oh, I'm almost off medicine. We're good. And then literally, I think maybe 2 days later, I was back in the emergency room. So it was just so much up and down that I didn't even really know what to say. And so, I think that made it hard to really talk about it. And then once we got in the thick of the struggle of it, it was just I just shut down.
Yeah.
It was
because you're just, focused on beating this thing. And it was going into it, we kind of looked at it, and that's what we were told is you'll deal with this, take some medication for a couple of weeks, and it'll,
pass. Yeah.
it'll pass. After a certain mark, 6 weeks, it'll take care of itself. So we kind of had that mindset. And then when it wasn't
that
showing any signs of leaving, it was kind of like, what's going on?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
is there something deeper? Like, you just kind of worry, because when you told one thing and something else happens, then you kind of like, what's happening? So
yeah. So I basically just want to start at the beginning, and we'll kind of go through the story. We keep saying it. I guess we haven't really talked about what it is. So essentially, we had Jakai. My pregnancy was beautiful. I had 0 complications, no issues. I was at risk for preeclampsia during my pregnancy because of lupus. I never had high blood pressure. There was one time I had an appointment where it was like in the 140s, but I had major anxiety going into that appointment because of things that happened prior to that. So that was like an isolated, this is why my blood pressure is high.
And didn't you like run into the office?
I literally
late?
literally ran into the office. And so, I never had high blood pressure during my pregnancy. My pregnancy was literally perfect. And then I ended up having a C-section because Jakai was lodged under my left rib cage and he was completely breached. I mean, like stuck. We tried things to get him to flip. He would flip and then he would flip back sideways. So once we knew that, he came out butt first. Like that was, but everything went great. Like everything was perfect. I had no pain. Like the highest my pain level ever went after was like a 2. When they would come in, what's your pain level 2? It was never high. We were able to go home with no issues. So we were home, like I said, for 10 days. We actually went on a walk that morning. And I remember waking up thinking like, I have a little headache, no big deal. Hormones, sleep, whatever.
Just had a baby. Of course you have a headache.
Just had a baby, 10 days postpartum. And then that headache turned into like a bad headache. And then I remember we went on a walk and then we took a nap. And when I laid down to take a nap, I was like, okay, just go to sleep. Maybe you're just sleep deprived. Woke up and the headache was worse. And the one thing that probably saved my life was I remember when I was discharged, our nurse told me, they send you home. If you have, bad bleeding, come back in. If you have this, come back in. And she said, if you have a headache that doesn't go away with Tylenol, come back in. And I remember thinking like, okay, let me take some Tylenol, which I did before the nap. And when I woke up, when that headache was worse, I was like, uh-oh, that is not good. And so I actually had a blood pressure machine at home because I was at risk during the pregnancy. I had to have one just in case I needed to be able to take my blood pressure at home. So I took my blood pressure and it was like 140s. Like it wasn't crazy high, but it was like, okay, we'll keep an eye on it. And then I took it, like an hour later and it was almost 160s. And so we went to urgent care. Urgent care sent me to the ER. And then from there, it was like the lowest we ever saw was like 164. That was like, okay, at least it's out of the 180s. And so from there, things just got worse. And I actually was sent to an emergency room that wasn't where I gave birth because it was closer. And because my blood pressure was already kind of climbing, they were like, just go here. If you go to the other one, you might have a longer wait. And with traffic, it would have taken us like an hour to get there. And they told me word for word, you'll go here, they'll give you some blood pressure medication and you'll go home. We were not expecting to be admitted, nothing.
We're like, cool.
Sounds
good.
So we went there expecting to go home that night. I had nothing. I didn't have my pump. I was breastfeeding exclusively. And so he wasn't taking full formula or anything. And I didn't have a pump to be able to pump when he couldn't come into the room. So we expected to be there and come right back home. Long story short, we get admitted to this hospital. They tell me I don't have postpartum preeclampsia, but they can't get my blood pressure down. And my kidneys were failing. And we're like, okay. So I messaged my doctor, my OB. I let her know. And she was like, you have postpartum preeclampsia. And I was like, well, they're telling me I don't. And she was like,
this is textbook.
Postpartum preeclampsia. So I asked if I need to go to my doctor and they tell me no, the protocol is the same overall. So I was like, all right, cool. After 48 hours at this hospital, they send me home when my last blood pressure reading was 154 over like 90 something. They send me home with medication, no instructions, nothing. And I was like, you know what? This is fine. I'm not even going to complain. I'm just going to go straight to my doctor. Just get me out of here. So we go home. We're moving that day.
We're moving into our brand new
apartment that day.
Yeah. And that was a blessing in itself just because we were hoping for like another bedroom, and it just kind of came naturally at a great time. But then it was like bad timing because we were dealing with this.
We didn't know we were going to deal with this.
We didn't know we were going to, and we signed a lease, and we had to get everything moved out of our apartment in like 7 days. And
thankfully the place was so like accommodating and so nice with everything.
Yeah, for sure. So that was, we'll get to that.
Yeah. Point. So anyways, we were moving that day. We had 2 hours to get home and meet the movers, but I knew in the back of my mind, I'm like, they sent me home and said my kidneys weren't doing good. My blood pressure's still high.
Yeah.
I cannot comfortably be at home right now. So I call my doctor and she says, what's your blood pressure right now? And I take it and it was 178 over like 115. It was something crazy. And she was like, you need to get in now. So we were home for all of an hour and a half? Yeah. Not even. Like
I literally cut the mover short. I was like, hey, we got to go. I'll do this.
Yep. And so at that moment, though, we'd spent a night and 2 nights in the other hospital. And so this time I was prepared. Packed a bag, packed a toothbrush, face wash. Like I packed everything, a pump, and we went to the hospital we gave birth. And so as soon as we got there, blood pressure was still in the 170s and they redid lab work. My kidneys were getting worse now. And so at this point, they were like, we have to admit you. And we were like, please do. Like, we just want to get this figured out.
Yeah.
And at that point, it was like, you do have postpartum preeclampsia. This is what we're going to do to treat it. You should be home tomorrow. We're going to get this under control. At max, you'll be here a couple nights.
Couple days, yeah.
That turned into 8 nights. Blood pressure never came down. It would come down and then it would spike right back up.
Yeah.
And essentially every time they would come in to check, and it was almost like a jinx. Every time they were like, okay, if this one's good, we can send you home. It would be like outrageously high, like 180s. And we were like, what just happened? We just had like a 110. Like,
it'll be a day of like great readings or like kind of progressive readings to where they were getting better and better. And then like, kind of the moment where it was like the test, we had a little stretch to where they would see if it was good enough for us to go home. It was like shot back up again.
Not just like 130s, 140s. Like, it's elevated, it would be up.
And they would take it a couple of times. It wasn't even like, it was one time. They're like, oh, you got to stay here. It was like, they'd take it again.
They would come back and take it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that was frustrating because it was like, you're so eager to get home. You have this newborn. You just became parents. You want to be home in your like newborn bubble and like soak up those snuggles and like just be home, be comfortable. Like, I'm in diapers, literally, like sitting there where I'm like, I just want to go home and be comfortable. And so, that turned into an 8-day stay. They send me home where I was controlled. It was good. And I had good readings for 24 hours. We get home. I have great readings for a while to the point where it was really low, like 90 over 60. And so once I had that, it was like, stop the medicine. We stopped the medicine and I started having rebounds. So long story short from there, I had to take my blood pressure like 3 or 4 times a day to make sure that it was staying controlled. And it wasn't. I would have like 170, 110, 130, 104. Like it was all over the place. And so that went on for months where every day it was like this anxiety of what is my reading going to be? Are they going to make me come back to the hospital? Because if you get 160s consecutively, they're like, you need to go in. That's an emergency. And so all I thought in my mind was, I don't want to go back. I don't want to do this again. Like, but you also don't play with that, And so it was just so much anxiety every single day of the worry of like, did it jump back up? Is it okay? And I think the hardest part was we would have great readings and then we would go in confident, like, yeah, everything's fine. And we'd see 170 again. And I would just be like, where did this come from? So, essentially, that's how I got diagnosed. For those that don't know what postpartum preeclampsia is, it affects your blood pressure and affects your organs, usually your livers and kidney. And if you don't treat it, it can be fatal. And if you have high blood pressure and don't treat it, whether it's preeclampsia or not, that can be fatal, right?
Yeah.
And so then now also when you add the organ damage on top, it's nothing to play with. And we took it very seriously. But I think also, if I could go back, I would have just went straight to, there's so much I would have done if I could go back that maybe this would have changed the way that my treatment went, or, it could have been a whole different story, but we can't go back. And so now we were just stuck with, okay, how can we move forward? How can we treat it? And I think the hardest thing was like my pregnancy was so perfect. I didn't expect any of this. I was like, I made it through the pregnancy. I can take care of the rest. And so with postpartum preeclampsia, the danger of it is when you have it during pregnancy, you deliver. You get your placenta out, and usually that helps to level out your blood pressure. But when you have it postpartum, your placenta's already out. Like it's hard to treat because they don't know what caused that. There are a lot of risk factors for it, which we'll talk about later too. But after that, it's like, what else can we do? The baby's already here. The baby's been delivered. And so at that point, it's just kind of, we have to manage your blood pressure and try to get your kidney function back up. And that's all you're treating. You know, I wish there was like you had it because of this, we fix this, and you don't have it anymore. And that just wasn't the case.
There was no clear correlation. It was just like, it's hormones, it could be anything, you know what I mean? And to be honest with y'all, she's giving y'all the watered down version. It was a lot more traumatic than kind of what she explained it. Like, she didn't even talk about just the back and forth of medications, like just finding.
Oh, yeah, I'm going to get to that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to jump.
Please.
I just, because just from outside looking in, like I was just looking at things just from my vantage point, and it was just a lot of things that I want to applaud her, because mentally, it took a lot of strength mentally, and I knew she kind of felt in her head she had to, because think about being in a hospital. You're 10 days out from having a baby, and you're essentially sick in the hospital, and we both literally don't know what we're doing. We have a newborn, and we're trying to figure out, being parents, and
like they would come in to take my blood pressure, and Jakai would be crying, and they would look at us, and we're like,
we don't know why he's crying. We just got here.
We're figuring this out too.
And just the nights of like, we didn't get good night's sleep because every 3 hours she had to get her blood pressure taken, and then, or just had to get a dose of medication.
And I was breastfeeding, and so we would try to time them coming in when I was already up feeding, but sometimes I'd feed, I'd go to sleep for an hour, then they would come wake me up to take my blood pressure, and then I'd have another hour before Jakai wakes up to eat. So,
and then, eating hospital food, sleeping in a very uncomfortable recliner for 8 days. And honestly, Jakai's little hospital bassinet was just like,
oh, bless his heart.
I hated seeing that. I didn't want him, like, we had a whole like beautiful, comfortable looking bassinet back home, and to see him
and he's like, what is this?
Exactly. So it was looking back on, like, when we were going through it, it was just like, it is what it is. Like, let's get through it. But looking back on it, it was like it was terrible.
Yeah. So that is what postpartum preeclampsia is. Essentially, it affects your blood pressure. It affects your organs. For me, it affected my kidneys. And so like you mentioned, now I can kind of talk about some of the trauma that it caused. So first of all, I've never had high blood pressure like that in my life. In college, I dealt with a lot of anxiety that caused high blood pressure, but I knew what it was coming from, and I knew what I had to fix to get that blood pressure down. With this, it's like, I didn't know. And I think for me, the hardest part was, I'm such a person that if you tell me what's wrong, I'm trying to figure out how to fix it with
Dr.
the
Toya.
research, right? And with this, it was like that nothing is telling me how to fix it. And I remember at one point, my blood pressure was like 183 over 120. They come in, they pump me full of medicine, they come back, and it didn't go down. And at that moment, I remember just being like scared, because I was like, they just shot something into an IV and it didn't work. At this point, I think we tried like 4 different medicines, and they kept trying something else and trying something else. And it was like, nothing was bringing it down. So that's when I got scared, and I was like, okay, so what happens if this doesn't come down? And real life at that moment, I remember thinking like, at least my son has a dad, like at least if something happens to me, like at least Jakai has a dad. Like that's what was going through my mind. And like that trauma is like, it's a lot when you just became a mom, and you are so excited to like grow with this little baby human who's relying on you. And then that gets put in jeopardy, where it's like, okay, he's depending on me, but what happens if I'm not here? And so then it got to a point where they were like, if this doesn't work, we're going to have to try this, and you can't breastfeed. So then on top of that, it was like that guilt of like, I'm not going to be able to breastfeed. I really want to breastfeed, but if I have to take this medicine, I can't. So then we start looking at formulas, and it was just like so much all at once. And so when that blood pressure wouldn't come down, I remember they came in, they're like, we're going to try one more. If this doesn't work, you got to stop breastfeeding. And so they come in, they give me this other one, they come back and retake it, and it was normal. And I just remember breaking down crying and being like, what is happening? Like, and that was, I think, on day like 4. And I was like, why does this keep happening? And the doctor looked me right in my face and said, I don't know. And at that moment, it was like, thank you for being honest, but that was terrifying where I was like, what do you mean you don't know what's going on, you know? And so when that happened, he wasn't in the room because Jakai was screaming, crying because he was hungry, but I couldn't breastfeed him until they got my blood pressure under control because they were like, this is an emergency. We need to get this down. He's gonna have to wait a second. So that broke my heart because I'm like, he's hungry. He's hungry. I need to feed him, you know? And so it was so traumatic to where they were like, you have to get out. So they made him leave. And I'm like, what do you mean he has to leave? I need him in here. I need the support. And so it was just like, so much like looking back, I'm like, I don't even think we've processed like everything that went on.
Because even when I left the room, first of all, I didn't expect to leave the room. My phone didn't charge, number one. So I didn't have contact. I couldn't like text her and be like, what's going on? And I didn't want to just barge in the room.
And they didn't tell him when he could come back. They're like, you need to go. And I'm literally laying there and he sees 190 on the blood pressure. And they're like, get out. And he's like,
with the baby. So he's screaming. We're in the lobby just like, I'm looking at him, he's looking at me, and like I'm lost. You know what I mean? So that was just like And
it was just like, of course, if I needed to use formula, let's go. You know, that's what we need to do. But it was like I just started bonding with the breastfeeding, and it was like that got taken away from me, or would have gotten taken away from me. Thankfully, I'm still breastfeeding to this day. And I think that's another reason why, like, I always thought like I'd get to 12 months and be like, all right, we're done. And we'll get to 12 months and he's not even close to weaning. Like he is a year old and he will be breastfeeding for a while. But I think because that feeling when they told me I wouldn't be able to do it, like now I don't take that for granted. And so once we finally got released from the hospital, we get home on...
Let me add context. I guess the reason they told her like stop, because a lot of the medications they were giving her, she could breastfeed on. If that makes sense.
Yeah, so and like, if that one didn't work,
they had to put it on
to the last.
Exactly, which she couldn't breastfeed on. So I just had to throw that in there real quick.
And once we got sent home, it was like 2 medications, and they're like, once your blood pressure levels out, you can start weaning off the medication and you're good to go. Usually around 6 weeks postpartum, people are healed. So we're like, bet. At this point, I'm like 3 weeks postpartum. I'm like, a couple more weeks on this. Cool. They tell me to take my blood pressure morning, middle of the day, and evening just to make sure that, you know, I'm not having those spikes again. Cool. We do that for a couple weeks and I start getting dizzy. I passed out once in the hospital. They pump me full of so much. I get up, I go to the bathroom and I like fall into the sink. I open the door and then
caught her.
Literally caught me. And the next thing I'm looking at, and I remember saying, where am I? And so they take my blood pressure and it was 90/60. And they were like, oops, got too aggressive with the medicine. Like, let's get you full of some fluids. So that was starting to happen at home where I was like, okay, I know it's getting too low, which to me, I was like, okay, I'd rather have it be low than high, but neither one is good, you know? And so we get on some medicine. And then once I try to wean off, I start having rebound. And then that's when the anxiety started. And it was just like, that rebound was so terrifying of like, is this rebound or is it actually skyrocketing again? And am I going to have to go back to the hospital? Am I going to have to go through this like game of trial and error again? And I think that's kind of when we started to realize how much the anxiety was playing a role in the blood pressure. And it would get to a point where I would take my blood pressure, my heart rate was 160. No joke, 160.
No lie.
And then when that happened, they were like, you need to go make sure that your heart is okay because your blood pressure or your heart rate shouldn't be getting that high. And I'm like, no. I have really bad anxiety. Like my heart is fine. Like, and it would only happen when I would take my blood pressure. And that's kind of when I started to realize like how traumatic this was for me. And I think I didn't realize it before because it was just something I had to do. I had to get my blood pressure down. I had to get better. But once I started to see that like effect that it had on me, it was like, okay, I really need to like get some sort of help or talk to someone. And then I found these support groups where people had gone through the same thing. And it was like weirdly not satisfying. That's a bad word, but it was helpful. It was helpful to see and read other people when they were like, they would show their blood pressure and they would be like, my blood pressure was good, but my heart rate was 170. And I was like, okay, same. Like, which is not good, but like to see that I was like, okay, this is happening to other people. I think that's when I started to realize like how much mentally that this has an effect on someone.
But also just seeing like so many other women were dealing with it.
Yeah.
And it was just something that, not that we hadn't heard of it, but it was just like, we didn't understand the severity of it until you just kind of go through it. So Yeah, it was. I mean, it got to a point where it was almost like superstitious. Like I had to be in the room with her to take her blood pressure just to
It was
kind
the
of
only thing that would like calm me down even a
because
little.
when you think about it, like you went through so many
Readings.
periods of readings to where like the blood pressure was gradually going down for weeks. You wean off the medication, then it skyrockets again. So it's like when do you like trust? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
that it's just a rebound and not your actual blood pressure.
Exactly. So, from her standpoint, she's kind of like, she can be in her head about it. She can kind of have doubts or, you know what I mean? Like not understanding what's going on. And I kind of had to literally coach her and say like, no, everything's fine. Like the doctor said, it would be a rebound. Let's get through it, trust it. And it took some days to where she could trust to see like, all right, it's coming down. It did rebound, but come down. And then we can kind of start weaning off. But it took some coaching, you know what I mean? Help her. I mean, I needed help too.
Please, yes.
I might need therapy too. But to help her just kind of get through it mentally, because I couldn't imagine a woman just doing that on her own and trying to like just be mentally strong through just taking your blood pressure 3 times a day, not eating.
While healing from a C-section and your hormones are still all over. Yeah.
You're breastfeeding, you're dealing with, waking up every 2 or 3 hours. You're not really getting much rest. You know what I mean? She was doing everything she could from a nutritional standpoint. She wasn't eating any salt.
Yeah,
literally.
That's another thing. We talked about that in the last podcast, and we'll kind of touch on that. So
they said low sodium, not no sodium.
They definitely were like low sodium, and I was like, no, I need to beat this. I was doing everything I could nutritionally wise. Like I was eating beets, drinking beet juice. I was drinking hibiscus tea. Mm-hmm. I was doing all these herbal things that people recommended. I literally did not touch a salt shaker for months postpartum. Yeah. If somebody cooked something that had salt in it, I was scared. I was scared to eat it because I was like, well, this might affect the reading. And I had to send in my readings to the doctor. And I was like, if I have a high reading, they're going to make me come back in. So I can't have that. I can't have anything. We didn't go out to eat because I was scared, because I was like, if we go out to eat, I have to come home, take my blood pressure. We were checking nutrition facts, like so awful, like crazy. So, and I think the other thing was I couldn't work out. And that was one thing that was really hard mentally, because if I would have been able to get back into working out, that would have helped me mentally. But I wasn't able to start working out until like 4 months postpartum, but I was able to walk every day, and that was so helpful. Yeah. And so, I think that was kind of like the gist of it. We had to take my blood pressure like 4 times a day, then 3 times a day, then 2 times a day. And then finally it got to a point where we realized like, this is anxiety. Yeah. Like
it was like December.
Yes, it was in December. So what is that? 4 months postpartum? 4 months, yeah. I was 4 months postpartum, and I remember telling the cardiologist, like, I think this is just anxiety, because I would get a reading that would be like, not even that bad, like 130s over like 90s maybe. And I would sit there for a minute, I would calm down, and then I would have a very normal reading. Mm-hmm. And then it would get to a point where if I really like calm down before, I would have like 103 over 68. Like it would be like, a good reading. And like, so once I told her that, she was like, okay, if it is anxiety, let's do a 24-hour blood pressure monitor and we'll be able to tell. So I was like, all right, cool. So we literally strapped on a monitor for 24 hours. If you don't know what that is, they give you this little thing. It looks like a phone, and you literally have it on for 24 hours. You can't shower
in your
sleep, and it would go off every hour during the nighttime and every 30 minutes during the day. So every 30, you live your life like normal. The only thing I couldn't do was exercise, and which was fine. So for 24 hours, we did that, and it came back perfect. It was like 121 over 70 or something like that. It came back great. Yeah. And the only time I had a high reading was at the doctor, when they took a test reading at the doctor, and that was the highest one. So I was like, all right, that's white
coat. And on the drive home.
And then on the drive home. Yeah. Yep. And then other than that, the numbers were great. And so once she saw that, she was like, okay, yeah, your blood pressure is fine. And I think hearing that mentally, that helped me a lot. Yeah. And so once we got that back, I was allowed to start weaning completely off medicine. And that was, I think January 2nd was the last medication I took. So what is that?
Almost
5 months postpartum. So for 5 months, I was on medication. And then even after that, it took me a long time. I'd been taking my blood pressure every single day for 5 months. It took me a long time to wake up and not have an itch to take my blood pressure. And it took me a long time to trust that my blood pressure was okay. And there were still times after I was off medicine and I could stop recording my blood pressure. There were times where, remember, I would go he'd be in the shower and I would be like, you know what, let me go take my blood pressure while he's in the shower. Cause if he saw me do it, he would be like, do not take your blood pressure. And then I would go take it. And then I'd go in there and be like, I just took my blood pressure, but it's good. Like I would feel guilty after because I didn't trust myself. Like it was such a mental game. And so that's when I started therapy because
it was just a game.
I think I started therapy in December, but then we had family come and like I couldn't be as consistent as I wanted. And in January, I was like, look, I really need help because it really messed with me mentally in a sense of like trusting my health. Every headache I got, I was like, my blood pressure's high again. I would get a headache and I would go take my blood pressure because I was scared that it was high again because that was how it started. Every time I go get blood work done, I check my kidneys because I'm like, did it mess up my kidneys? Even though they've been fine ever since. And so it really made me not trust myself and my health again for a long time. And I had to trust like, you're healed now, you're okay, it's okay. But I think the biggest thing is it like took away that joy of wanting to have another baby to the point now where, and I don't want anyone that has asked this to feel guilty because you don't know, but anytime someone now is like, when's baby number 2? When do you have baby number 2? The first thing that goes through my mind is, am I going to die from postpartum preeclampsia?
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to go through that again. And we want another baby. I want Jakai to have a sibling. I wanted to be pregnant again. But now I have to also accept that risk increases for having it again. Do I want to go through that again? I thought I was going to die, and like, that's trauma and that takes a long time to heal from. And it's no one's fault when they ask, like they don't know, but what goes through my mind is just like all that trauma all over again.
And it just overshadows like the joy that came from it too as well. So.
Yep. And it's definitely like, so now I don't ever ask people like, do you want another one? Because
you never
know that, but people who ask, they just are genuinely curious, and people also are like, oh, like, do you want him to have a sibling? And I'm like, yes, I do. And then they're like, so when are you going to have baby number 2? And then I literally go into a mental spiral of like everything I had to go through. And that's something that I'm working through. That's something that, again, like I've been doing therapy and it's been so helpful to talk about and just kind of like, I've also talked to other people who had postpartum preeclampsia and people who had HELLP syndrome. And that has been so helpful because it made me feel like, one, I'm not alone. And two, that you do heal from this. You can heal from this. And there is another side to it. And people who had this and they were like, I couldn't have another one. I couldn't do it. And then people who had 2, 3, 4, 5 more after, you know? And so all of those stories were so helpful to see. But one big thing, like I mentioned at the beginning, was seeing people say like, you talked about your symptoms. I had those symptoms. And then I went to the doctor and I was diagnosed. Like that was crazy to me because I was like, wow, like I did not know about postpartum preeclampsia during pregnancy. I knew about preeclampsia. My sister had it twice. So I do have a family history of it, but I didn't know that you could get it postpartum. Did not know. And I thought that once I was through with the pregnancy, I was done. Like no more concern, no more risk. Like it's fine. And that was not the case. So yeah.
Whew. Let's take a deep breath, everyone. But we're so blessed that we got through it. From a support standpoint, I tried my best to do what I could to help you out. There were some dark days, y'all, where it's heart-wrenching when you think everything's going well, and then she does a reading, and it's like back. You felt like it's back to square one. We went through that like 3 times to the point where she just kind of felt lost. She felt like this is never going to end. You know what I mean? And we just try to.
That's the like exact feeling. It was like, this is never going to end. I'm gonna have to take my blood pressure forever. Like. When am I going to feel like I can wake up and not have to go do my blood pressure? Like that the sound of the machine was just like, here we go again.
Yeah. And even just from my perspective, like I couldn't even, it was hard for me to focus on other things. Like it got to a point where I couldn't even like work out or like, just go to the gym. And like, it got to a point where I didn't want to leave her. I didn't
I was
want to.
scared to be home by myself.
Yeah, I was scared to leave her just because it was like I was trying to do my best to work out from home, and it was.
And it's again like I was going through this. I wasn't completely done, I would say, till like 7 months postpartum with everything. And that's a long time of, probably like 5 months postpartum is where I felt comfortable doing things again. But at that point, we're supposed to be like, enjoying this time as new parents. And like, we couldn't because it was so hard to just focus on anything but getting better. But that was the other thing is I could not have gotten through it without his support, because there were times where it was like, like he said, he would have to come into the room. Like I would try to go do it by myself. And then like I would be literally physically shaking because I'd be so scared. And like he would come in there and I'd be like, okay, like he's in here, I'm safe now. And a lot of that I think was because when I was in the hospital, he was right there through every reading where that was kind of my safety. And so, yeah, like, shout out to you because you were a big part of this healing. Like, again, and then also like the nighttime, like he said, it got to the point where the cardiologist was like, you need to sleep. And I was like, with a newborn who's cluster feeding, and so we figured out a system where I could sleep from like 10 to 6. I would give him milk for a bottle.
Night shift.
He would do the bottle and then I would wake up at 6 and he would go to sleep at 6 o'clock, So we figured out a system just for me to be able to get some sleep to see if that would help the readings too.
And
so he not suffered, you suffered and sacrificed is the word.
That's a good word. That's a better word.
He sacrificed a lot for me to be able to heal. And so yeah, I think that was a big part of this because I couldn't imagine, like, my mom was a single mom of 7, and like, imagine if like she had something like this to go through. Like, I thought about that a lot too, people who may not have the support. And like, I tried to remember like every blessing throughout it because it could have been worse. It could have been so much worse. So I was grateful for the support I did have and the ability that I had to be able to get through some of those times. So.
Yeah, I mean, those blood pressure readings were that was the worst part about it, is just because our whole day surrounded around the blood pressure. Like, we didn't want to go on walks too soon near the blood pressure because we were scared it was going to affect it. We didn't want to eat too close to, like, it was so many things we were reading and told, like, if you eat too close or if you breastfeed too close,
like we were playing this game
every day. It was just like we had to create this strict schedule of when we were doing what, and to the point where like we couldn't do anything essentially.
Couldn't live.
Like, we couldn't live. We didn't want to go out. We didn't want to go, to the mall or go out to eat or anything. It was just like,
like he was like, let's go on a date to eat. And I was like, okay, well, what time? Because I have to take my blood pressure at 5. And if we go out 4, it was no way to live. And I think one thing I'll say, like, how I kind of want to wrap this is like, first, like, the risk factors. Being Black was a big risk factor. First pregnancy was a big risk factor. C-section was a risk factor. So I had a lot of those risk factors. Age is one. I think like under 20 or over 40, which I was 32 when, right? 31 when I gave birth. Yeah, 31. So the age wasn't really a big factor, but that is a factor. If you're over 40, under 20, there's some other risk factors in there too, but out of all the risk factors, being Black, first pregnancy, and C-section are the ones that I had. And then if you had it before, you're likely to have it again. So that kind of goes back to that like second pregnancy of like, it's not a guarantee that you'll have it, but the risk factor is there too. So,
and one thing I'll say, and she can, hammer this, advocate for yourself. Like, as much as you can, whenever you don't feel something right. At the end of the day, look, doctors are there to help you out. They're there to support you. They're there to treat you, but you know your body more than anyone else. You know what I mean? If you're feeling anything or you're feeling something different than what you're getting, you got to voice that, because had we not done that at that first hospital, who knows if we would have even gotten to the hospital we were supposed to be at, where we originally ended up at in time. You know what I mean? So really advocate for yourself. Or if you have a partner or a support system, have them advocate for you when you can't. You know what I mean? Like, it was certain points where I had to question the doctor. I was like, hey, like, are you sure? She just woke up. You just woke her up out of her sleep to take her blood pressure. Like, she hasn't even gotten a chance to like process? How do you know this reading isn't just like pure anxiety? You know what I mean? So I had to kind of like advocate for her, because it was also like a point in time in the hospital where like I kid you not, she looked like dead, like for lack of better words, like she looked like she couldn't even like talk or have a thought for herself or express herself. You know what I mean? I had never seen her like that. So I had to like really, step up and kind of advocate for her in certain points to where she couldn't even really speak for herself, because she was so lost in the process that she couldn't
very heavily medicated.
Very heavily medicated. I even tell her, if you look back at some of the pictures, like her skin tone,
was like yellow.
Was like yellow.
And,
like it was just like that was like the worst I had ever seen her. So like it got to a point where I had to like, take data for myself to understand what's really going on here and how can we kind of get out of this situation. So, we were blessed to, through a lot of faith and just really trusting the process, we got through it. It took a lot of trial and error. But yeah, this podcast is really obviously to share our journey, but also just as awareness. Like, there are women who could be going through this right now who have no idea what they're dealing with. And like you said, just you speaking up and putting this on your stories and putting this on your page really helped a lot of women. Not only women who caught it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But also women who might
went through it
and needed that, reassurance to know that, wow, like you went through it, you got through it. Maybe I'm currently going through it and I need some support to get through it. So this is really just to kind of help anyone who could be going through it, or just from a preventative standpoint, if you kind of fit those risk factors, just really pay attention to it. Keep an eye on it.
Talk to your doctor about it. Like bring it up.
Yeah.
Because now if we do have another one, like that's something that I will obviously be on top of it because I'll have to be. But it's something that like now every time someone says they're pregnant, that's the first thing that goes through my mind, which I'm also working through. But I will say too, I do want to leave the podcast ended on like some tips. It's not really tips because there's not much that you can do to prevent it. But I will say like being healthy during your pregnancy, like I was overall pretty healthy. I worked out literally up until the day I gave birth. We went on a like 2-3 mile walk the day I gave birth, and so I was strength training all the way up to it. So I did everything right and still got it. But I will say like some tips and things that helped me through it is just really, like he said, advocating and asking questions. And like I asked all the questions, I did all the research. And if I found anything, I asked like, can I take this? Can I do this? Like anything that would help me, like I asked. And some of it, they would look at me like I was crazy. And then some of it was like, yeah, actually that might be beneficial too. And then encouragement just to push through it. Like it's hard. It's hard. And for some people, it like my rheumatologist had it and she said by 6 weeks she was off medication and back to normal. And so you hear that and it's frustrating because you're like, okay, well, what am I doing wrong? And then I saw some people who are still on medication years later, and so everyone's story is so different that I think it's hard. You can't, and that was one thing they told me in the hospital. It's like, you can't compare yours to other people because there's no like, this is what it is. Like it's everyone's journey of it is so different that there is no comparison, And so just to give you some encouragement that if you are going through it right now and you're listening to this, like it does suck. It sucks. And I just want you to know you're not alone. And it's something that I wish no one had to go through, but I hope that you do have support through it. And if you don't, please reach out, leave a comment, like let us be there to support you. That was one thing that when I did make a post about it, like so many people sent in encouraging words, and just reading that was so helpful. So let me leave some encouraging words for you. Let me give you some motivation to get through it. Because there were days where I was like, it's either going to be like this forever or I'm going to die because I don't know what else to do. Like there were nights that I would have a bad reading at night and I was scared to go to sleep because I was like, I don't want to have a stroke in my sleep, And so those are the thoughts that go through your mind when you're dealing with this, but people don't see that on the outside. On the outside, people saw like, oh, look, your baby's so cute. And I'm like, yeah, thank you so much. In my mind, I'm literally suffering, And so those are the things that people don't see, but I understand that and I see that. And sometimes just hearing from someone who went through it that like, this is awful, but you're doing what you're supposed to do, you know? And there was a friend that had it that I reached out to one day that I just texted long text, like, I'm suffering mentally. Is this ever going to be over? This sucks so much. I'm literally crying myself to sleep every night. I'm scared to go to sleep. And just hearing her say, like, I went through all that. That's normal. You're, you know, like, to hear that what you're going through is normal in those feelings, and you're not wrong for feeling those things, because sometimes, like, he was so helpful, but you feel like you're complaining every day, you know, and like, you feel like someone that isn't going through it, it makes it hard to like say the same thing over and over again, because you're like, oh my gosh, I'm just complaining, even though he never made me feel like that. But when you hear from someone who did go through it, they understand that like deep pain where it's like, you know, like, I know what that feeling is. We're going to push through this together. How can I support you? You know? And so if you're someone who's reading this who has gone through it, drop some comments of encouragement, because that was one thing. We made a YouTube post about it, and there were so many YouTube comments of people. Like, again, there's 2.2 million subscribers. That's a lot of people who could have gone through this, who left encouraging notes that could have helped somebody else that was going through it at the same time. So just a little word of encouragement to keep pushing, and you know, let us be there to support you. And there is light at the end of this. I thought there wasn't for so long, but here we are. So.
Yeah, and just kind of one thing I'll leave with, if you don't have just like that immediate support, just if you have someone, a friend, family member, just let them know, just talk and let them know what you're going through. Because Toya she keeps everything inside. And I know this about her. And nobody, again, knew what she was going through. And if that's someone like you know, you kind of like to just keep everything in. You don't like to just put things out there. You know, it's very important to just let somebody know what you're going through, even just mentally, because it's a mental roller coaster. You know, who knows where she would have been if I wouldn't have been there in certain instances. And just kind of communicate and just make people aware of where you are physically and mentally, just so, you know, someone's in the know. Just because you never know who can help you.
And those Facebook groups, those were really helpful too, because you could just leave a comment. You could leave it anonymously if you wanted to. And so those were helpful because I had an outlet, you know? And so if you don't have anyone, like he said, like even those Facebook support groups or other places that might have support groups, those were really helpful too.
For sure. All right. So hope y'all got something out of this video. I mean, it was a little, you know, it was a little dark, but
those are like, again, like these are the important talks to have, because all you see is us working out on YouTube. And if you follow us on Instagram, like maybe you see a little bit more personal stuff, but it's important to show that, because I think sometimes like we might have a period of time where we might kind of like fall back a little, and it's never because we're wanting to do that. It's usually something like this going on. And so just to give you also an idea of like, you can be healthy, you can do all the right things, and things can still happen. But I'm so grateful that I did do the right things, because if I would have been, you know, like obesity is another risk factor. So there are things that could have made this a lot worse too, had I not taken care of myself during. And so it's still important to do that, even though things can come up.
For sure. So drop a comment down below if you have dealt with this, if you know anyone who's dealt with preeclampsia and postpartum preeclampsia, to be honest with you. And just kind of drop your, just sort of your journey, what you've gone through, because you never know, like reading a few comments made a world of difference in just what she went through.
So it could help someone else.
And then also from a preventative standpoint, like people who want to get pregnant and you might, again, fit those risk factors, just kind of to be aware and to kind of look out for yourself. So drop that in the comments.
Yeah, thank you for listening to my story, and I look forward to reading all of your stories and encouraging words.
All right, so let's
end this on a positive note with a dad joke.
Exactly. You go ahead.
Okay. My joke is more of a statement.
Okay.
Have you heard about the queen who was 12 inches tall?
No, I haven't heard about her.
Oh, well, she was a great ruler.
Okay, that's a good one.
She was a great ruler.
That's a good one.
Okay, go ahead.
Why didn't Apple, the company, start selling its own cars?
Why did they?
Didn't they?
Why didn't they sell their own cars?
Yeah.
They were rotten.
Okay. They don't support Windows.
Wow, that's a good one. That is a good one. That's a good one. Okay. All right, I'll end it on one more.
Okay.
What did the fish say when he swam into a concrete wall?
What did the fish say?
What did the fish say when he swam into a concrete wall? He swam right into it. What'd he say?
I don't know.
Damn. Like a water dam. Damn, like a water dam.
You don't have to specify. We know the dam you're talking about. Whoa, that might be the best one. That might be the best one.
Damn. All right, everyone.
Hold on, I got one.
Okay, one more.
Let's see. Why did the person land a job at the diner?
Why did the person land a job at the diner?
Why did the server get a job at the diner?
Why?
Because they brought a lot to the table.
At the diner table? I'm playing. I got it.
All right, y'all.
All right. Thank you again for listening to this episode. We know it was a little more personal and not as funny as some of the other ones, but for very good reason, because there might be someone listening to this who this could really help. So Thank you all for listening.
Our son is awake.
Yeah, thank you in advance for your comments and encouraging words that someone might be reading. It could really help them. So thank you for joining us, and we will see you all at the next one.
Damn.